So hello everybody, my name is Andy Pruitt and I'm the Director of Communications here at Charleston County School District, and thank everybody for coming out today for essentially what has become a regular press conference after board meetings with Superintendent Anita Huggins and district staff leaders, and then depending on the location, staff from that school or that facility. So we're here at Edith Frierson Elementary School, which they're now the home of the excellent elves. And so we're excited about their progress that they made on the state report card. That's why we're here today. But obviously there's a variety of topics that were discussed in the board meeting last night. And so now I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent, Anita Huggins, and she'll continue the press conference. Thank you for coming again. Anita?
Thank you all for being here so very much. I'm also very grateful for the chief level officers who stand alongside me every day, the great leaders and teachers of this district who work so hard to do wonderful things for children. As Andy indicated, this is our effort to continue the transparency of this administration and this team, and to give the press and the public more access to schools and the great things that are going on across Charleston County School District. So after every board meeting once a month, we'll meet with you to talk more about the district's response, district initiated agenda items that we covered the night prior with our trustees. We're grateful for 9 trustees who value kids, and again, we're grateful that you're here today to talk more about what we shared last night. First and foremost, last night we talked about the excellent progress that our students have shown on the South Carolina Ready test, on demonstrating college and career readiness across our system. I'm incredibly proud of the wonderful team here at Frierson who jumped from unsatisfactory to excellent in just one school year. Principal Latrice Smalls and Assistant Principal Mrs. D have led a team of talented individuals who really focused on kids, improving outcomes, and expanding opportunity for academics here at Frierson. You're going to hear now from Mrs. Smalls, who will showcase 2 or 3 of the things that they have done of significance that she believes have positively improve student outcomes. So Ms. Smalls, please join us here. Share with us who's here with you and some things that you and your team have done.
Of course. So this morning I have with me my instructional lead team, which Ms. D, my assistant principal, Ms. Dukes, my instructional math coach, and then my upper L teacher. She teaches 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, Ms. J. Spitz. So that's my team, of course, and just a few things that led us to excellent. We would say just building true relationships with all stakeholders, intentional PLCs, and then just the instructional framework that we use. And just to put all of those things together, we really lived the theme that we had for the year of when we learn, we grow. We truly did some learning and some growing in our building.
When you see improved student outcomes like these, they don't happen by accident. It takes strategy, it takes thoughtfulness, and it takes a lot of talent. And so we highlighted and thanked publicly the work of our principals last night and the work of our teachers, without whom the success of our students simply would not be possible. So I want to thank Mrs. Smalls and her team again for the extraordinary progress that they've made and the inspiration with which they've left a lot of us. Secondly, last night, as you know, the board approved 5-4 participation with the TIF. So I'm going to ask Daniel Prentice, our CFO. I want to thank the media for the work they've done covering this matter, to give a 30-second overview of the district's participation in the TIF, and later we'll give you the opportunity to ask any lingering questions you might have about the TIF. Mr. Prentice.
Good morning. There we go. So as you know, last night the TIF was approved by the school board. That participation is different from the participation that CCSD has engaged in the past with TIF districts. What's unique about that is we've never engaged in a TIF where an intergovernmental agreement was put forth as the means of our participation. So as part of that intergovernmental agreement and negotiating with the City of Charleston, the City of Charleston is going to rescind their lease in 75 Calhoun Street, which will enable CCSD to pick up approximately 30,000 square feet of office space in the building for our use. They'll also increase their allocation in the Alexander Street parking garage from 160 to 240 spaces for CCSD's use. They're also going to give us an opportunity which has not occurred in prior TIF districts, where any revenue that's collected over the bonds that are issued by the city, the principal and interest on those bonds, that additional revenue will come back to CCSD during the term of the TIF, which is something that's not happened before. We also asked that they cap their bonding capacity at $400 million. There's a stipulated term in their redevelopment plan that said that was the approximate amount of bonds they may issue, but we were able to cap that in the IGA with the city, and they're also going to have to provide us with an annual audit. So happy to take any questions on that, but just wanted to give a high-level overview. Thank you.
Two other items that might be of note to the public. We passed last night, or the board approved its reading of policies related to Regulation 43-170, which outlines a process for parents who are concerned about instructional materials in their schools. So that did pass last night, the second reading. Also, the first reading last night that passed was the cell phone policy, which is also based on state proviso. So overall, those were the biggest highlights from last night's meeting. We're happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
So obviously you guys can just go one at a time
Okay.
and just keep standing over.
Great.
It'd be awesome.
I think first off, thanks for having us here. I know a big thing with us media has been wanting to get in the schools and get video of it, so this is a great opportunity for us, so we appreciate that. Second off, I think just kind of focusing on the instructional materials. I know a lot of this was kind of not a choice that the district necessarily had. It kind of came down from the state. And so first off, Anita, can you tell me a little bit about principals' responses that you've heard when you've been talking to them about these policies and kind of what their responses have been like?
That's a great question, Emily. Thank you. Mrs. Simmons, our Chief Academic Officer, and Dr. Luke Clamp, our Deputy Superintendent, have been working diligently with principals since the summer and since we've had more knowledge about this regulation to ensure that they know the support that we want to offer them and to their teachers. One of the provisions in this regulation does require teachers to catalog books. I used to teach English. I had a very extensive classroom library, and so this regulation asks that teachers make available the catalogs of their books, for example, to parents upon request. And so Dr. Clamp and Mrs. Simmons have worked with principals to ensure that teachers have had the level of support they specifically need in their schools. So most of our interaction with principals has been making sure that they understand the regulation and understanding what support that we could offer at the central office.
And what have some of their concerns been, at least from your guys' conversations with them, if you don't mind sharing?
Certainly. Dr. Clamp and Ms. Simmons, do you want to come up and talk a little more about principals and any concerns or suggestions they may have made?
Sure, thank you. The Regulation 43-170 really put forward a challenge to educators to take a two-prong approach to selection of materials and retention of materials, and that's number one, is the material age and developmentally appropriate, and number two, is it in alignment with the standards and the expectations of the profile of the graduate. So for our principals, they have welcomed the opportunity to really ensure that the content and the curriculum that we are choosing and the materials are rigorous and that they're appropriate for the age with which the students that they're serving. So they've not necessarily been concerned, but really it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to take a look at the instructional materials and our classroom teachers as well to take a look at those materials using that two-pronged test to ensure that they're meeting the expectation and the spirit of the regulation.
As far as with the TIF, what kind of, comes next, and how soon can we start seeing, I guess, changes for the district?
Yes, so the intergovernmental agreement that was approved by the board, the city of Charleston still has to give their final reading to the ordinance creating the TIF district. That's scheduled for November 4th. And so assuming that would be a favorable vote and it passes, then the city of Charleston has to move out of 75 Calhoun Street by June 30th of next year. So our plans would be to begin to program which staff would move and when they would move to try to get them moved sometime after the city moves out into the summer and try to get everybody in there going into the next school year. That also allows us to bring in folks that are currently in trailers in North Charleston into the office building that is already in place in North Charleston to try to centralize as much of our central office staff as possible.
Gotcha. And then I guess for, the state of the schools next month, can you kind of talk about an overview of, not you especially, but,
He can take it. He can do it.
If you want to.
You saw him answer a lot of questions last night. I'm happy for him to take it.
I guess what can, some families, parents, and the staff be expected to, from the state of the schools?
That is such a great question. In the state of the schools, in just a few weeks, our teams are really excited about it. We're going to talk about the progress that the district has seen over the last 3 to 5 years. We're also going to talk about the strategies that we believe have helped us accomplish those those significant achievements with students, But what we're also going to focus on is the areas where we have the potential for the most growth, which, as I shared a bit generally with the school board last night, and I'll share more specifically at State of the Schools, is around serving our MLL population, our multilingual learners, and our special education students. We have a lot of room to grow and expand how we serve kids, and so I'm excited to engage at the State of the Schools. There'll also be a lot more important people there than I am, most specifically our students. They'll be there to entertain and perform and to showcase the amazing talent we have across this great district. Wonderful question. Thank you.
Valerie, 2 questions.
So my questions were more about the implementation of the cell phone.
Absolutely.
Just curious, what have you heard so far from, principals, teachers, other staff at the schools, and also parents? Like, are there any concerns around, smoothly implementing with the commercial?
Valerie, that's a great question, and appreciate you asking about stakeholder feedback. That's really important to us in the district. We can only grow and get better through diverse perspectives, and that's incredibly important to us. Overwhelmingly, most of our stakeholders have a favorable view of the limiting of cell phones. There are parents who are concerned on the other side that they won't have access to their students in the event there's some sort of emergency during the school day, for example. But overwhelmingly, principals and teachers believe that this will allow students to focus more on their learning during the school day. They believe that it'll limit the opportunity for conflict that we all know can exist with cell phones and Snapchat and other sorts of social media distractions. And our parents have overwhelmingly given us positive feedback. We're working now with principals to ensure that we have systems in place, though, for, I think your question was about a smooth rollout. We've done this in several schools already, James Island Charter High, for example, Lucy Beckham High, for example, and they've done it very successfully also in some of our middle schools. There's various processes in place. Some utilize the yonder pouches, which are a little too costly for us to implement as a system. And then we have other storage containers and facilities that are more affordable and economical. So we're thinking about, with Dr. Clamp and Mrs. Simmons and our associate superintendents, how to make sure this is effective and seamless while we're trying to ease the concerns of parents who might be a little anxious about not having access to their students during the school day. But again, overwhelmingly pretty positive.
Okay, and then I also had a follow-up, and I just want to grab what you said about, smoothly implementing this through all schools. I just had a question about, if there have been any talks or if this is going to depend on each principal, disciplinary actions around, a student that might be caught with their cell phone, like what would happen in those scenarios?
That's a great question. Dr. Shavonna Coakley, who works with Dr. Clamp specifically, is looking at our PDP, our Progressive Discipline Plan, to determine what, if any, changes need to be made. We want to ensure as a district that our students are in class as much as they can be. We believe that students' access to high-quality curriculum and teaching and engagement with students is critical to be able to continue the sort of success that we've seen as we look at SC Ready scores, as we look at our EOC scores. And so we do not want to ostracize. We do not want to pull kids out and put them in ISS, and so we want to reteach. We want to make sure our expectations are clear when students might violate. We want to work with parents to ensure there are systems in place. So we're looking at that PDP and how we can make sure students understand the expectations, make sure we work collaboratively with parents so that when students violate or don't do what we expect, that we're able to coach them in a way that they can more readily follow the rules and still be in class. So Dr. Coakley will be able to give us more information as we get closer to implementation at our board meetings, Valerie. So great question. Thank you.
Great. I have one more last question on the
Please.
instructional materials. I know that the state's first review is coming up, and it's kind of sparked some debate with some of those books. I mean, at least from especially once you guys began that Facebook page, being able to kind of directly hear from parents. I mean,
Sure.
what have you guys kind of been hearing with those concerns from parents? I know it's kind of out of CCSD's technical hands sometimes when it comes down to the state, but what have you been hearing from local parents?
It's, again, a great question, Emily, and we appreciate how the media focuses on stakeholders and their thoughts and feelings. So what we've heard is that parents want to have, we've got two different views, and we hear from parents who want students to have access and opportunity related to books of all content, and then we have parents who want a voice in what their students read and have access to in our library media centers across the district. And so this week's first committee review at the state level has sparked some interesting dialogue and debate. There are various titles on the list to be considered among the committee, and so we await the decision and the recommendation of that committee to the state board and the next steps on that. In fact, that was a topic of on our cabinet agenda this morning. Dr. Clamp and Ms. Simmons had their teams ready to review those recommendations as we anticipate them later this week.
Wonderful.
Just to kind of piggyback off of the growth you were mentioning, have you guys seen any significant trends as far as, student academic success, staffing, anything of that nature that you wanted to kind of elaborate on?
We have, and I want to thank Mrs. Simmons, our CAO, who has really spearheaded a lot of our efforts over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, first as the leader of the elementary learning community and then as the CAO around access to a high-quality curriculum, which we believe has positively impacted our students' literacy results, access to professional development, increase in staffing through the weighted student funding formula. So I'm going to ask her if she doesn't mind to come up and speak a little bit to the work that her team has done and the professional development that they've offered with principals. Ms. Simmons.
Thank you, Superintendent Huggins. I'm really excited and proud about the progress, the historic nature of the progress that CCSD has made in recent years, and we do attribute that success to investing in a high-quality instructional program in terms of our reading curricula as well as math. We've also invested heavily with the Board of Trustees support and professional development for our teachers and letters training, which is centered and grounded in the science of reading. And so I can't say enough about the system as a whole. For the last several years, it's not a one-year effort. This type of improvement, gain, is really a years-long effort from really solid team members making the wise and right investments in robust, rigorous, high-quality instructional programming, as well as our teacher development. We believe in investing in our human capital. Thank you.
Valerie?
I have no more.
We have time. We still have time for a couple more questions. So everybody
I
has
have one last one.
Please.
If I could ask Ms. Smalls, actually,
You could
just
ask
one
Ms. Smalls
question.
anything you like.
Yeah.
Microphones are
I
yours.
promise I won't put you on the spot. I know that when we had first seen these report cards and kind of breaking them down, we had spoken to both the superintendent and deputy superintendent a little bit about what the process was like for the schools that, significantly jumped in a year. Could you tell me a little bit about some of those skills or tools that you guys use that you hope other schools could use in the future to, hopefully make the same jumps as your school did?
Of course. So there were a lot of skills that we used. Just to begin, when I first came here, I made my team familiarize themselves with the data and what the data was saying. In my last answer, I talked about intentional PLCs. We made sure that these PLCs were developing our teachers because we needed developed teachers in order to have successful students. And so my team familiarized themselves with the data, and I made sure that my teachers did that as well, making sure that they knew where their students were and where they needed to be, and also looking at how they needed to get there. So I would say our number one skill was development. We made sure that that was done, and then you hear me say familiarizing, so familiarity, knowing the data, using the data to drive and inform instruction.
Thank you.
Deja, you have anything?
Emily, You have another
Oh,
question?
no, no,
You
no.
sure?
Yeah, I'm good.
So Emily, I'd also like to make sure you all know that alongside of Mrs. Smalls works a team of elementary learning community administrators who help guide that work, and then who are able to look at what schools do individually and as a system determine what we need in certain places and how we need to be strategic for resources and professional development. And those leaders are Dr. Jennifer Swearingen. She is somewhere. She's hiding behind the CFO, and Mrs. Quinetta White. And Quinetta, if you would join me up here, Mrs. White, E.L. Frierson is assigned to Mrs. White. Mrs. White has served as the mentor and the level leader for E.L. Frierson, and she also has had another group of schools that has made tremendous gains over the course of the last year alongside of Dr. Swearingen, Ms. Francine Mitchell, and Dr. Jamie McCarthy. And so, Ms. White, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm about to, and ask you if you could just highlight some of the system things that you've seen here at Frierson and that you've done, the 90-day plans, for example, and the other things that you've done to ensure that strategies are in place. Now, I'm going to come over there and ask questions.
Yeah.
What sorts of things have you worked systemically with the Transformation School Zone?
Thank you, Superintendent Huggins, for not putting me on the spot. So we as a team have been afforded the opportunity to attend the University of Virginia, and we have dived deep in the coaching method. And so our strategy with Dr. Swearingen and the elementary learning community team, we believe that it is crucial that we are side by side, boots on the ground, with principals, supporting them in lieu of adding on their plates. We are here to support them and build their capacity. And we do so by strategically planning learning sessions with them, and where we look at the data and not just take a look at the data, but do something about it. These are lives. They are not just names on a paper or just a test. My motto is children do not get a do-over. So we have this one chance, this one opportunity, and together, principals and level leaders come together to dive deep in the data and devise a plan. Each principal that leads their school in the transformation schools that I have the opportunity to support, they have a 90-day plan. And weekly, I go sit with them and we look at the action steps in their 90-day plan to see how we're moving forward and if we need to tweak that plan. And if they need my support and these great leaders from the district to they may need materials, or they may need an opportunity to go into another school to sit with another principal, just opportunities to continue the growth and the progress of their 90-day plan. No other questions? Thank you.
That's great, Cornette. That's perfect. So we really want to thank you. If you have I'm open to any other questions that you might have. But if not, we're happy you're here. We're happy for you to take a look alongside Andy and Latrice and their team at some classrooms to see the sort of learning going on. And we hope you'll come back next month. We're really excited about the new opportunity. Thank you for driving out here and being willing to engage with us. Have a great day.
Thank you.